Hello everyone, welcome back to Offline Performance. Today we're doing an install video on our 2022 BRZ to fit the old generation FRS BRZ 86 aluminum red intake manifold onto these cars. Some of the benefits to this is obviously going to be aesthetic. The wrinkle red manifold looks way better, but also we gained a good amount of low end torque when we did some dyno testing after we fitted it on with no tuning. Obviously with tuning you could get better gains in different ranges, but for us, bolting it on immediately got some better low end torque, which these cars desperately need. So let's get into the install. I'm gonna start with some pliers and a 8mm nut driver. We're gonna get this inlet boot loose off the throttle body. Also take this hose off and this connector. Can get these clips with some pliers as well. We'll get that off. All right, next up, we're going to take this bar off to give us space to get the injector cover off, and then we'll also take this injector cover off as well. All right, and then these injector covers just have two 12mm nuts, one on the front, one on the back side. Oh, that one's on the ground. And then there is going to be fuel present in your engine unless you pull the fuel pump fuse, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. So when you're taking these fuel lines off, just be aware there is going to be fuel in it. And I like to just kind of tuck these out of the way. Okay, next we're going to take the throttle body loose. The way that I'm going to show you how to do it, you won't have to take any coolant out of the car, but there is two coolant lines going to the throttle body. If you take these hoses off, there will be coolant present. I'm not going to take those off, so you don't have to re-bleed the cooling system. And back here, there's two 10mm nuts holding this vacuum line to this metal bracket. We're going to take those off. Get that out of the way. And you can just push that off to the side. And then we'll take this big PCV hose and just pull it off the back side. And while we're back here, the evap purge solenoid connector, it's right here on the cylinder, right underneath the cylinder forerunner. We're going to pull that off as well. Get that unplugged. And then we need to take the injector plugs out. So we'll get those. And the high pressure fuel pump connector as well. So all that's done over here. We just need to undo the 6 actual manifold bolts that hold the manifold to the head. Get these two connector clips out. And then I like using a long extension 12mm swivel on these because the rear ones can kind of be a pain to get to. There's a harness in the way. I'm going to grab a magnet because it's a little bit easier than trying to fish your hands down in there. But they should look something like this. And keep all your hardware handy while you're doing this install because a lot of it we're going to reuse. We do include everything you need to mount the new manifold on though, but a lot of the OEM hardware we're going to reuse. That one came out with it, yep. Okay, now last thing is just the map sensor plug. We're going to take that loose, and then we should be ready to pull this thing out. So like I said, this harness lays over the ear of the manifold on the back side on this one, so I always take this one off first because it can be the tricky one. You gotta watch yourself, or else you'll go ripping your map sensor plug out. There we go. Bet it comes right off now. Okay, so the new manifold comes with manifold gaskets, so you won't have to reuse these, but we do have to take off this purge solenoid here, the hoses, the fuel lines, and the fuel rails, and the injectors. All right, while you have it at this state right here with no manifold on, there is a harness clip right here that goes to this. All you need to do is just kind of break that loose, because we're going to need to shove it over just about an inch. That's all you need to do. It's the only modification to the harness that you have to do, and that's the only reason that's there is because we have to clock the throttle body just a hair to get all the bolts to line up. All right, here is the package of adapter stuff that we're going to need, and your new aluminum manifold, whether you got it from us or somewhere else. We have them on our website. First thing you're going to notice, a couple zip ties. This is going to be used for later, almost at the very end. We have all of our hardware, clamps, and then the actual adapter piece itself. So we'll start with this, because this is the most simple part. On the manifold adapter here, you'll notice that it's O-ringed on both sides, so you don't need any gaskets, paper gaskets, or RTV or nothing like that. So this flat side here, see how it has that little angle? That's going to go to the bottom, just like this. It's going to give us just a little bit of clearance that we need. Oh, and before you go to putting this on, there's going to be two little studs in the manifold on these holes. All those are for the factory paper gasket to hold it in place. Since we're not using that, just grab a pair of vice grips, yank those out, throw them in the garbage. We don't really have a torque spec on these. Just get them nice and tight. And if you wanted to use some Loctite on there, it wouldn't hurt. Just use like a blue Loctite so that it doesn't, nothing too aggressive. Not needed, but if you wanted to, wouldn't hurt. So we're gonna take this port right here, which is a 12 mil. We're gonna break that loose and take it out. If you have a boosted application, be it supercharged or turbo, you can actually use this port for boost reference, whether you need it for your boost controller or if you need it for a gauge, you can use this port and run a vacuum hose to it and use it for boost reference. But ours is naturally aspirated, so we're going to plug it with the included plug here. This guy. Come on, get on in there. There we go. And this is pipe thread, so it is going to feel like you're stripping it, but you're not. It just gradually gets a little bit tighter every time you turn it. Okay, next we'll transfer the map sensor over from the old manifold to the new one. So you can just use a Phillips head, and we are not going to be able to reuse this bolt here because it is almost like a wood screw. It's meant for the plastic. So just go ahead and put that back in there when you're done, if you ever need to put the manifold back on. And then we'll use this button head screw for it. So that'll go right through like that into the new manifold. All right. Next up, we're going to transfer over the fuel lines. So we'll need a 12 millimeter for that. Okay, just those two there for the fuel rails, and same on the other side. And we will be reusing these bolts here, so don't lose them. I always, when you're pulling these out, try to keep the injectors actually seated into the rail. So when you pull them up, don't pull on the rail itself, pull on the injectors. That way everything stays in place. Okay, and then this fuel line just has these little holders underneath the runners here. You just kind of pull them out. We'll transfer everything over. Alright, we'll set those in there. Same thing on the other side. Little note here. There's these cushions that go on the bottom of the injectors, and sometimes they like to stick into the manifold. So when you pull your injectors out, be sure that these are on the injectors, not left in the manifold, or else you'll have a really big vacuum leak, okay? Okay, now, last thing we need to transfer over here is the purge solenoid. So you can leave this bracket that mounts the actual solenoid to the manifold. You can leave that. Just undo this 10 mil bolt here. And we will be reusing this. You can just kind of... All right, got the purge solenoid here. You're going to take the included nylock nut that comes in the kit. I'm going to use it to mount the purge solenoid to this new manifold. There's a little tie down point right here. So we'll take the bolt that I set down, which has since disappeared. Oh. And we'll tighten it down. Okay. All right. The manifold is just about ready to go on. Okay, this brass PCV adapter, the hose that came out the other end of that solenoid, we're going to put this in here. That's just going to chill. We'll hook that up later. Okay, we'll just pretend that that was there the whole time. Okay. All right, now, last thing, we're just going to make sure that these gaskets here are good and they're going to seal nice, so we don't have a vacuum leak later. And then we'll come over to the car. Just be sure that while you're pulling your black manifold off, that none of these foam pads for the injectors came loose. Make sure that they're in their spot, and make sure that you didn't drop anything down into the intake ports. So these ones are all good. Now it's time to actually put the manifold onto the car. The driver's side, and then lay the passenger side down. Okay. Like I said, there's a bunch of harnesses that lay over the mount ears so they can kind of fight you. So just make sure that you get them out of the way. We're flush, ready to bolt it down. Before we go any further though, we're going to take this purge solenoid plug here, and we're going to plug it in right there. Okay. Let's get our factory 12 mil long bolts here. We'll bolt the manifold down. Will note, these are really hard to get in, but just putting them in with 2 fingers, be sure that you put them in with, or that you start fastening them with the hand tool. Make sure that they're not cross-threaded, because if you cross them, you're gonna have a lot of work ahead of you. And I like to loose fit all the bolts first before I tighten any of them down. That way I can wiggle them all into place without fighting the other ones. Okay, that's all tight. Now we can get to putting the PCV back onto the manifold and mounting the throttle body. Back here in our install kits, we have a little 1-inch section of hose. That's what we're going to use to reduce the PCV. Ooh, almost dropped it. Almost lost it. So we're gonna shove that little section of hose onto this port. And then using the smaller end, we'll put that in there, but first we're gonna put the clamps on. Ooh. Okay. Put that on there. All right. Okay, now, this brake booster line here, I'm cool with it just chilling down below. Alternatively, you could take the hoses off and get another set of adapters, male-to-male unions, and run a chunk of hose here. But I just left the hard line. You can zip tie mount it to the manifold if you want. If not, it just kind of chills right there. It's just a hose. It's not a big deal. All right, now we will mount the throttle body to the manifold. And like I said earlier, it is going to be just a little bit clocked because we have to fit 8 bolts on a mounting surface. So, but we moved that harness earlier to provide us the necessary space to get the throttle body in there. All right, throttle body's on. We will plug in the map sensor now. I can just chill down there. This is for the air intake. This is also for the air intake. We can put the fuel lines back on. We will not be using the injector covers. They're not included in our kit. If you would like to order some, you can find them on Subaru's OEM parts website. Oh, I think I have that wrong, don't I? Nope, I got it right. Okay, and we'll tug, make sure they're on. We don't want fuel spraying everywhere. Then we will connect the high pressure fuel pump solenoid and the injectors again. Now this brass adapter that we had earlier, that is going to go to your evap line. Normally these manifolds use a little vacuum tree here that reroutes it over here, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to put it right here. You can trim this line if you'd like, but I just put it down there and then kind of tuck it down, get it out of the way. This side's done. Come over to the other side, plug in its injectors, and we'll put the air intake back on. So if you notice, there's some things missing. This has our OTL Super Suck dress-up kit.
With the high flow.
With the, what is it, a Pexi?
I think so.
Or AFE power.
AFE, yeah.
AFE drop-in filter. We'll put that back on there.
What are the perks and benefits of the OTL Super Suck kit?
Oh, you know, it cleans up your engine bay, lets you check out the sweet OTL header that's down under there, you know?
Get that light on.
So if you have an OTL header, we have an uncoated one on here, but let you check out your header if you have one of those too. Links in the description, dude. We'll hook up this hose here. Bring that clamp back on. We're gonna tighten this here. And lastly, we just need to put the strut bar back on. And we're done. That's it. Super easy install. Really only should take you about an hour, I bet. I think Jay said that it took me 8 minutes to get the plastic manifold off, but I've done this a couple times. All right, that's it. It's on. It looks awesome. Like I said, it's going to have a little bit better low end torque now with no tuning. When we tuned ours, it did gain even more power throughout the rev range, but the noticeable bump was in the mid-range. So yeah, I hope you guys have good luck with it. If you have any questions, list them in the comments, and we can try to reply to as many as we can. This setup is really going to shine for forced induction applications. That's kind of why we did it, because we don't trust the strength of the plastic manifold. But Force induction on this should be awesome. It has an extra port for a vacuum source if you need it. And, but I mean, it looks so much better already. So like I said, if you have any questions, hit the comments, email us, and good luck.